Hello kids, welcome to Elite Link Online. I hope you all are safe at home with your families. I am Olinda Priyachi to teach you Chapter 1, The New House. The New House is written by John Boyle. He is an Irish novelist. He has written many novels for adults and children as well. Introducing the chapter to you all, Bruno, a 9-year-old boy who lives in Berlin with his parents, his elder sister Gretel, and a house help Maria. Bruno's father is a commandant in the German army. Commandant means a person who is in charge of a particular force. His father has been given orders, so they have to shift from Berlin to a new house. This is what the chapter is all about. Moving on, when he first saw their new house, Bruno's eyes opened wide. His mouth made the shape of an O and his arms stretched out at his sides. Everything about it seemed to be the exact opposite of their old home, and he couldn't believe it that they were really going to live there. Yes, children. As he entered his new house, Bruno's eyes were wide open, his mouth with an O, and his arms stretched out. The new house seemed to be exactly the opposite of his old house. He couldn't believe it that he was really going to live in there. The house in Berlin had stood on a quiet street, and alongside it were a handful of other big houses like his own. It was always nice to look at them because they were almost the same as his house, but not quite. Other boys lived in them who he played with if they were friends, or steered clear of if they were trouble. Taking his memories back to Berlin, the Berlin house which he lived in was surrounded with many other houses as well. They seemed to be looking very nice because they all looked the same. But not quite. Here, not quite means, I hope you remember children, that Bruno's father is a commandant in the German army. So Bruno is much disciplined than the other kids. The boys who lived in the other houses played with Bruno. But if there were any trouble to him, he would steer clear. Steer clear means he would avoid them completely. The new house, however, stood all on its own in an empty, desolate place. And there were no other houses anywhere to be seen, which meant there would be no other families around and no other boys to play with, neither friends nor trouble. Yes, the new house had no other surrounding houses. Empty, desolate place means the house stood on its own. There were no families, no friends, not even trouble. The house in Berlin was enormous, and even though he'd lived there for 9 years, he was still able to find nooks and crannies that he hadn't fully finished exploring yet. There were even whole rooms, such as father's office, which was out of bounds at all times and no exceptions, that he had barely been inside. Coming back to Berlin, the house in Berlin was quite huge, and he hadn't finished exploring the nooks and the crannies. Here, nooks means corners, and crannies means the narrow openings. He hadn't fully explored it yet. There were also many rooms. His father's office, which was out of bounds. Out of bounds means it was out of his reach. He hadn't stepped his father's office till then. However, the new house had only 3 floors, a top floor where all 3 bedrooms were, and only one bathroom. A ground floor with a kitchen, a dining room, and a new office for father, which he presumed had the same restrictions as the old one, and a basement where the house help slept. Yes, the new house had 3 floors. The topmost floor had 3 bedrooms with one bathroom. The ground floor had the kitchen, the dining area, and a new office for father. Here, the same restriction means, I hope you know, in Berlin, Bruno had not stepped his father's office there. So the same rule applied here as well. And a basement where the house helps sleep. Basement is an underground area. All around the house in Berlin were other streets of large houses. When you walked towards the center of town, there were always people strolling along and stopping to chat with each other, or rushing around and saying they had no time to stop, not today, but they had 101 things to do. Yes, coming back to Berlin, children, the houses there were quite large. And when Bruno walked towards the center of the town, there were people strolling, stopping to chat, rushing around, and some saying that they don't have time today. Probably they could meet some other time because they had 101 things to do. There were shops with bright storefronts and fruit and vegetable stalls with big trays piled high with cabbages, carrots, cauliflowers, and corn. Sometimes he liked to stand in front of these stalls and close his eyes and breathe in their aromas, feeling his head grow dizzy with a mixed sense of sweetness and life. But there were no other streets around the new house, no one strolling along or rushing around, and definitely no shops or fruit and vegetable stalls. Yes, children. In Berlin, there were bright storefronts. Storefront means the banner of the shop's name. Okay, and in that there were fruits, vegetables, they were piled high with vegetables mentioned. He would close his eyes and feel the aroma. His head would grow dizzy, means his head would spin a little with a mixed sense, the sweetness. But back here in his new house, there were no streets, no one strolling, no one rushing, and to tell you the fact, there were no shops of fruit and vegetables as well. When he closed his eyes, everything around him felt empty and cold, as if he was in the loneliest place in the world. Back here in the new house, when he closed his eyes, he just felt that everything was empty, it was barren, and he felt that he was in the loneliest place in the world. There was something about the new house that made Bruno think that no one ever laughed there and there was nothing to laugh at and nothing to be happy about. Now Bruno made up his mind that in this house no one is going to laugh at anybody or there won't be anything to laugh about. I think this was a bad idea, said Bruno a few hours after they arrived, while Maria was unpacking his suitcases upstairs. Maria wasn't the only house help at the new house either. There were three others who only spoke to each other in whispering voices. There was an old man too, who he was told was there to prepare the vegetables every day and wait on them at the dinner table, and who looked not only unhappy but also a little angry. I think the best thing to do would be to forget all this and just go back home. We can chalk it up to experience, he added, a phrase he had learned recently and also was determined to use it often as possible. After a few hours, Bruno thought to himself that it was a bad idea since they've come into the new house, while Maria was unpacking his suitcases. Apart from Maria, there were three other servants who always spoke in whispering voices. Why? Because Bruno's father was a commandant in the army, so discipline was at its best. Among them was an old man who was unhappy and angry. He was there to prepare the vegetables and also to wait on them while they were eating. The best thing to do was to forget and just go back home, thought Bruno. We can chalk it up to experience. He meant that let's forget this as a bad experience. Mother smiled. I have another phrase for you, she said. It's that we have to make the best of a bad situation. Mother smiled and told him that she's got a phrase for him too, to make the best of a bad situation. Yes, children. Aren't we making the best of a bad situation right now? The current situation that we are in, the lockdown, we are, right? Well, I don't know that we do, said Bruno. I think you should just tell father that you have changed your mind and well, If we have to stay here for the rest of the day and have dinner here this evening and sleep here tonight because we are all tired, then that's all right. But we should probably get up early in the morning if we are to make it back to Berlin by tea time tomorrow. To tell you the fact, mother's phrase had not interested Bruno anyways. He was trying to persuade his mom to tell her that if we were resting here for the day, had dinner quickly, slept and woke up to leave for Berlin, then they could reach there by evening. Mother sighed. Bruno, why don't you just go upstairs and help Maria unpack? She asked. But there's no point unpacking if you're only going to. Bruno, just do it, please, snapped Mother, because apparently it was all right if she interrupted him. But it didn't work the other way around. Yes, sir. Although Bruno was trying to persuade his mom, she wasn't ready to hear what he was saying. So she angrily told him to go upstairs and unpack. We are here, we've arrived here. This is our home for the foreseeable future. And we just have to make the best of things. Do you understand me? He didn't understand what the foreseeable future meant and told her so. It means that this is where we live. Now, said Mother, and that's an end to it. Bruno's mom is trying to explain what foreseeable future meant. It meant that since his father was given orders, they had to leave Berlin and shift into a new house. Now, this new house is their own home, which they all have to stay. That's the end of discussion. Bruno couldn't understand how this had all come about. One day he was perfectly content playing at home with three best friends for life, sliding down banisters, trying to stand on his tiptoes to see right across Berlin, and now he was stuck here in this cold, nasty house where no one looked as if they could ever be cheerful again. Bruno thought to himself, how come this sudden change? I was so happy in Berlin with my friends. Sliding down banisters. Children, sliding down banisters means the railing of a staircase. I hope you know small children like to take their toy cars for a drive on the railing of a staircase. He would also tiptoe to see Berlin, and here he is stuck up in this house, and he thought to himself that nobody will be happy again. Bruno, I want you to go upstairs and unpack, and I want you to do it now, said Mother, in an unfriendly voice. And he knew that she meant business. So he turned round and marched away without another word. Now Mom was getting angry. So she told him in a very unfriendly voice. She meant business that when someone means business, they are serious in what they are saying. On his floor, there were just four doors, two on either side facing each other, a door into his room, a door into Gretel's room, a door into Mother and Father's room, and a door into the bathroom. This isn't home, and it never will be. He muttered under his breath as he went through his own door to find all his clothes scattered on the bed and the box of toys and the books not even unpacked yet. It was obvious that Maria did not have her priorities right. Yesterday, after his mother scolded him in an unfriendly voice, he muttered to himself that this will never be my house. He went on top, and what did he see? His bed was scattered with clothes, toys, books. He thought that Maria wasn't doing her job well. Mother sent me to help, he said quietly. Maria nodded and pointed towards a big bag that contained all his socks and vests and underpants. Looking at Maria, he told her that Mom had sent him to help her. So she pointed out to a bag where his socks, vest, and underpants were. If you sort that lot out, you could put them in the chest of drawers over there, she said, pointing towards an ugly chest that stood across the room beside a mirror that was covered in dust. Yes, Maria gave Bruno a task and told him to sort out some clothes and put them in a chest of drawers. What do you think of all this, Maria? He asked after a long silence because he had always liked Maria and felt as if she was one of the family. Now Bruno wants to know Maria's opinion. So he asked her, what does she feel about coming into this new house? All what? She asked. This, he said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Coming to a place like this. Don't you think we've made a big mistake? Now he's trying to tell her, like, what do you feel about coming here? Did we make a mistake? That's not for me to say, said Maria. Your mother has explained to you about your father's job. And now Maria tells him that I have got very little to say in this because she is only a house help. And secondly, she reminds him that mother must have told him what his father's job is all about. Oh, I'm tired of hearing about father's job, said Bruno, interrupting her. That's all we ever hear about. If you ask me, father's job this and father's job that. Well, if father's job means that we have to move away from our house and the sliding banister and my three best friends for life, then I think father should think twice about his job. Don't you? Yes, children. While Maria was telling him that what his father's job was about, he was irritated. He just interrupted her and he told her, from the time I've come into this new house, I've only been hearing about father's job. If father's job was to shift into new houses, then might as well father should think and find a new job. Just at that moment, there was a creak outside in the hallway, and Bruno looked up to see the door of mother and father's room opening slightly. He froze, unable to move for a moment. Mother was still downstairs, which meant that father wasn't there, and he might have heard everything that Bruno had just said. He watched the door, hardly daring to breathe, wondering whether father might come through it and take him downstairs for a serious talking to. Just as he was arguing with Maria about father's job, he heard a creak outside in the hallway. He looked up at his dad and mom's room and he froze. His heart missed a beat. He thought to himself, while his mom was downstairs, could it be his father in the room? Did his father hear just what he said to Maria? Oh God. Now his father is going to come into his room, hold his hand, and take him downstairs for a serious talking to. Here, serious talking to means a good scolding. The door opened wider, and Bruno stepped back as a figure appeared. But it wasn't father. It was a much younger man, and not as tall as father either. But he wore the same type of uniform, only without as many decorations on it. He was carrying a box in his hands and walking towards the staircase. He gave Bruno a quick nod and continued on his way. Yes, sir. The door opened wider and a figure appeared. But it wasn't his father, so he was relieved. It was an unknown person, not as tall as his father, but he wore the same uniform without as many medals. Decorations means medals. The unknown stranger was carrying a box. He nodded to Bruno and quickly made his way downstairs. Who was that? Asked Bruno. The young man had seemed so serious and busy that he assumed he must be someone very important. One of your father's soldiers, I suppose, said Maria. We'll get to know them in time. Now, Bruno was curious to know who this person was. He asked Maria. So Maria tells him that it could be one of his father's soldiers and they'll soon get to know him. I don't think I like him, said Bruno. He was too serious. I don't even think there's going to be anyone to play with other than Gretel. And what fun is that after all? She's an hopeless case. Now Bruno doesn't seem to like the stranger because he felt he was too serious. Neither there was anyone to play with him. and he didn't even enjoy his sister's company. He felt as if he was about to cry again, but stopped himself. He looked around the room without fully lifting his eyes up from the ground, trying to see whether there was anything of interest to be found. There wasn't, or there didn't seem to be. Yeah, he wanted to shed a tear, but something stopped him. Glancing at the room, he thought, was there anything interesting in this room that could make him happy? Something caught his eye. Over in the corner of the room, opposite the door, there was a window in the ceiling that stretched down into the wall. He walked slowly towards it, hoping that from here he might be able to see all the way back to Berlin and his house and the streets around it, and the tables where the people sat and told each other hilarious stories. Yes, something had caught Bruno's eye. It was a ceiling window that stretched to the wall. And what did he see? He saw Berlin, his house, the streets, and also people telling each other hilarious stories. Hilarious means funny stories. So you see, children, although there was a sudden change in Bruno's environment, he did not give up on Berlin. I hope you all enjoyed this chapter. See you soon.